On the first day of December 1948, as the first light of dawn touched the coastline of South Australia, the tide pulled back to reveal a sight that would haunt the city of Adelaide for nearly 80 years. Propped against a cold concrete sea wall on Somerton Beach, a man lay perfectly still. His legs were extended and his feet were crossed, resting as if he were merely catching a brief moment of sleep before the day began. But as the morning joggers approached, the stillness became unsettling. The man was cold. He was dressed in a high-quality suit, a white shirt, and a red and blue tie. Impeccable attire for a day at the beach. Most unsettling of all was the discovery that every single label had been meticulously cut from his garments. He carried no wallet, no passport, and no identification. In the eyes of the law, he was a ghost in a double-breasted suit. To the world, he became the Somerton Man. The mystery began not just with what was found on his person, but the deliberate nature of what was missing. Investigators found a bus ticket to Glenelg, a metal comb, and a packet of chewing gum. There were no signs of a struggle, no trauma, no bruising. Even the half-smoked cigarette resting on his collar seemed to suggest a peaceful, if sudden, end. It was as if he had simply sat down and allowed the world to fade away. But as the autopsy began, the calm exterior of the case started to fracture. The pathologist, Dr. John Dwyer, noted that the man's internal organs were severely congested with blood, his spleen 3 times its normal size. All the clinical signs pointed toward a potent, fast-acting poison, something that could stop a heart in seconds. Yet, despite exhaustive testing, no trace of any toxic substance could be found in his system. It was a phantom killing, a death that defied the chemistry of the time. Desperate for a lead, the police widened their net. They eventually discovered a brown suitcase left in the cloakroom of the Adelaide railway station, checked in the day before the body was found. Inside was a collection of thread, an unusual type of orange wax thread not found in Australia, and more clothing with the name tags missing, except for 3 items. They bore the name Keane. The police spent months hunting for a missing Mr. Keane, searching through shipping manifests and military records, only to conclude that the name was likely a red herring, left there to lead them in circles. Who was this man who had so carefully scrubbed himself from existence? The case went cold until months later, when a tiny, scrolled-up piece of paper was found hidden in a secret pocket sewn deep inside the man's trousers. It was so small and well hidden that the initial search had missed it entirely. On the paper were printed 2 words in exotic script, Tamam Shud. The phrase is Persian. It translates to "it is ended" or "finished." These are the final words of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a 12th century masterpiece of poetry about living life to the fullest before the inevitable end. This discovery sparked a nationwide hunt for the specific book that the scrap had been torn from. Eventually, a man came forward with a bizarre story. He claimed he had found a rare, first edition copy of the Rubaiyat tossed into the back seat of his car, which had been parked near Somerton Beach on the very night of the death. When detectives examined the book, they found something even more baffling scrawled in pencil on the back cover. 5 lines of capital letters that appeared to be a secret code. Military codebreakers, naval intelligence, and master cryptographers all took their turn at the jumble of letters. They looked for patterns, for wartime ciphers, for linguistic keys. None could break it. It remained an unbreakable wall of silence between the living and the dead. Beside the code was a phone number. It led to a nurse named Jessica Thomson, who lived just steps away from where the body was found. When she was shown a plaster cast of the dead man's face, witnesses claimed she nearly fainted, looking as though she had seen a ghost. Yet she denied ever knowing him. She took whatever secret she held to her grave, leaving the world to wonder if the Somerton Man was a Soviet spy caught in a web of Cold War espionage, or a jilted lover who had travelled across the continent for a woman who refused to acknowledge him. For 70 years, the Somerton Man remained in a nameless grave, his identity a void in the historical record. But science was evolving in ways the detectives of 1948 could never have dreamed of. The breakthrough didn't come from a dusty file or a deathbed confession, but from a single, microscopic fragment of the past. In 2022, Professor Abbott of the University of Adelaide finally obtained permission to exhume the remains. However, the real key had been hiding in plain sight. A single hair trapped in the plaster of the man's original death mask, kept in a museum for decades. Using advanced forensic genealogy, the same revolutionary technology used to solve cold cases from the 70s and 80s, Professor Abbott and genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick began to rebuild a family tree from the fragments of his DNA. They weren't looking for a spy, they were looking for a cousin, a sibling, a grandfather. The tree led them away from a world of international intrigue and back to a simple, quiet life in Melbourne. The Somerton Man finally had a name: Carl Webb. Carl was not a shadow operative or a high-level defector. He was an electrical engineer and an instrument maker. He was a man who liked poetry and spent his Saturdays at the horse races. But he was also a man in pain. His marriage had tragically collapsed just months before he vanished, and his wife had moved to South Australia. The code in the back of the book? Most researchers now believe it wasn't a cipher for a top-secret mission, but a list of horses Carl intended to bet on. The frantic, mundane shorthand of a man who was struggling to find a reason to keep moving forward. The mystery of his identity was solved, but the story it revealed was far more human than any spy novel could ever portray. The identification of Carl Webb closed a chapter that lasted nearly a century, but it opened a window into the quiet tragedies that often go unnoticed. We know now his name, his face, and his family. Yet the silence of Jessica Thomson and the exact nature of the poison that left no mark remain whispers in the South Australian wind. Carl Webb is no longer a ghost, but he remains a reminder of how easily a life can be erased, and the incredible lengths we must go to bring a single soul back from the shadows. If you found this dive into history fascinating, please consider subscribing and hit that notification bell. We have many more secrets to uncover. What mystery should we look at next? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.